There we have a Yamaha DT, and it is currently a little bit poorly. It doesn't really have a bottom end or a top end, but it's alright in the middle. So we think the power valve is sticking or not working or doing something, and it's stuck sort of halfway, so it's not giving it what it needs. Now on start up, you turn the key on, it tries to actuate the valve and it should go. But instead, it does this. Doesn't sound good. Now, down here should be the actuating things. So if we pull this cover off, on the way, might have to pull the exhaust off and see what we've got in the port. Because what the power valve does is change the size and effective height of the exhaust port. Those cables look to be intact anyway, which is good. Alright, let's have a look deeper. You can see in there. Pretty minging. With the exhaust off, which was surprisingly easy to come off, we now have access to the other side of the valve and in the exhaust port, so we can sort of see where it's held and where it's sticking. And it feels like it's full of goop in there, which is not nice. Gets all fouled up, comes together, which means it doesn't breathe properly, and the cycle gets worse as it gets more fouled, more goopy, more stuck, more gross. Come on. Okay, so this cover's come off. It's got a, you see in the sun, it's got a little O-ring on there, and it was just a dead tight fit. And this is the power valve in here. If I flick the ignition on again, you can see it's trying to dance. Now, that can either be the solenoid that pulls those cables isn't doing its job, or this is stuck. So what I'm going to do is get those cables off the other side and see if we can spin this. That's interesting. So we didn't actually have to take the cables off. We get in here, that is spinning, full range of movement. And if we have a look in the bottom again, the valve is turning. I don't know if you can see that. I can. So what we have here is, if I reset this way, it looks like when I turn the ignition on, it can pull it all the way around that way, but can't pull it back. So I'm guessing solenoid. Solenoid or servo, whatever you want to call it. It's effectively a motor that pulls those cables and obviously has a positioning sort of system in there so that it knows where it is. Now what I did here was go through the full electronic diagnosis of these circuits, and GoPro's decided to crap the audio off. So pretty much what I did was, you found the 3 pins there with the comments on the bullet connector, and was checking resistance between the circuits as you move the motor. And what I found was a massive dead zone that gave no continuity, so it obviously meant that the motor didn't know where it was, which confirmed for me it wasn't the control unit, it was the actual servo solenoid. So we had to buy a new one. And here I marked off the dead zones where I wasn't getting any continuity, and you can see that the motor won't pass through there without trying to change direction, sort of know where it's going. Confirmed. Right, well, besides a shed load of noisy roadworks going on, we have a new solenoid motor thingy for the DT. So we'll get that fitted, and hopefully it will self-check as it's supposed to, and then we'll have a power band. Removing the tank and the seat and the panels so we can get into the solenoid again. Woo! Right, so we've got the solenoid fitted here, but we do have a little bit of an issue. If I hit the key and go for the self-check, that's where the solenoid sits. However, if we look down in here, the power valve is slightly off. It needs to be about there. This is a little like pin and a gap that lines up at the top there. But that doesn't make sense with where these cables are. It should be sort of over here on the other side, as if this is 180 degrees out. So what I've looked at is, you see we've got the thread for a screw up here. The head's obviously on the other side, and there is a little flat spot across there. Now on here we've got the head on one side, the flat spot's on the other. So I think at some point this has been taken off. It is a second-hand part because fucking doesn't seem to be anywhere that sells them anymore. I would have thought with the popularity of the DTs that there'd be a good aftermarket or refurb parts, but nope. So luckily it come from an owner's club. So what I'll do is pull the little cable wheel thing off, and we'll flip it round, and hopefully the power valve does what it should. We have success. If you watch this when I flick the ignition, ace. And what you do is set the top end up, line that hole up at the bottom, and then do the cables so they're just tight, and then back them off a quarter turn following the manual. We'll build it back up, see how it rides. It's definitely better. Feels a little bit sort of fluffy, and there's an odd issue in first gear. It just seems to not quite like first gear so much. I'm not quite sure why. It might just be that first gear is really short, or it's just not happy somehow. But anyway, last time I took this up to the mountain, which is where we'll sort of head now, up towards Craig, it would do maybe 55 mile an hour, and it really wasn't happy about it. So I'm expecting to see a little bit more of the clock used this time. It is very windy. We're having sort of 40 odd mile an hour winds, which is well, you feel it a bit more on a little bike anyway. You don't quite have the mass. Doggy. So before it'd do 60 maybe going downhill, but it was pretty broken. So we'll see what we get now. Some cars coming. Okay, just in front of them.
I think that's it. It was I maybe could have scraped 80, but we had to wait for this car. But that wind really affects a small bike.
Well, I'd say that's definitely fixed the power valve issues, but I do think there is maybe something clogging the carbs. There's just carb even, it's only got one, doesn't it? Just a little bit of changeover between the jets. It's a little bit of hesitation, so we'll pull that apart and have a look. But for now, she's ripping far more than she was. It's not going to be fouling plugs, it's not choking about. She's back on the band.